Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, sponsored by ACR Poker, where we are right in the middle of the High Five series. Usually we do that in the month of April, but this year we just couldn't wait to get it started. We've got a $630 main event coming up with a guaranteed prize pool of at least $1 million US. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am in sunny, pleasant, beautiful Tucson, Arizona, where this weekend you can find me at Laughs Comedy Cafe performing alongside original Latin king of comedy, Joey Medina. Are you kidding me? These shows are going to be unbelievable. Joey is an absolute powerhouse, and you want to come and check us out this weekend. I think we have 2 shows Friday and 2 shows Saturday, and you can get tickets at laughstucson.com. So, guys, I want to thank you for all the positive feedback about last week's episode. I was talking about how I'm out here in these Twitch streets, and I have been enjoying my streaming journey. I even got a new Taylor Swift poster for the background when I get back to New York. I promise you guys will be able to see my Taylor Swift poster. I'm trying to post my streaming schedule on my twitch.tv/Clayton Comic page, but my schedule keeps changing. I keep getting these weird comedy shows on nights when I think I'm going to be able to stream, etc. You know, first world problems to be sure, but, you know, I appreciate the love. I'm learning about Twitch. I don't know really how to do anything yet. By the way, if anyone out there knows how to add a command like !podcast or !bounty or anything like that, I'd appreciate the help, because I've been Googling how to do it. And as you guys know from our previous conversations, I am definitely not the best when it comes to technology, so I'm having trouble with that. So if anybody knows how to set that up for me, that would be an amazing service. You can reach out on Twitter at Clayton Comic or hit me up in the TPE Discord, which we have a link for that. It's free in the description of the podcast here. Just click and join the Discord. You'll find out about our free roll each and every Sunday, or almost each and every Sunday. We give away $1,000 courtesy of ACR Poker. So join the Discord and find out about all that. And also communicate directly with me about how to get my Twitch stream even more fantastic than it already is. The Venetian schedule for the summer was released this week, and I'm excited about some of the tournaments that they have coming up for us. And the Venetian, for the most part, the mystery bounty trend, they're only hosting one mystery bounty tournament all summer. They are preferring to stick with their invention, which I actually played in one back in December when I was out in Vegas. I enjoyed it. It's called the Ultimate Bounty. So the way their bounty format works is that the bounties are lower on day 1 or in the early stages before the money, and then the bounties go way up once you're in the money. So it's kind of a hybrid between a traditional bounty tournament where bounties never change and the progressive knockout bounty format, wherein obviously it pays a lot better to bust somebody later in the tournament than it does on like the first hand. So I like it. You know, it changes the strategy a little bit. The bounties are more meaningful once you're in the money than they would be in a traditional bounty tournament. You know, like one of these World Series of Poker tournaments where it's $1,000 super turbo bounty, where $300 is collected for each player that you bust, regardless of when or how. So, you know, in that format, you know, especially a World Series of Poker event, the prizes at the final table are going to be in the 6 figures. So who cares if you win an extra $300? So this is one way to kind of make the bounties a little bit more meaningful towards the end without having to deal with the difficult math that is sometimes associated with the PKO format, where it's great to do those online, where the computers can figure out how much everybody's supposed to get paid and stuff. But maybe lots of room for human error in the live version. Although the Win has had some success, of course, with live PKOs. And I think I played another one. I know I played another one. I think it was in Maryland, at Maryland Live perhaps, which went off without a hitch. It can be difficult, especially when two players split a bounty for some reason. That's where things get a little bit weird. Anyway, the Venetian is avoiding all of that drama just by having larger bounties in the money than they do before the bubble bursts. Still waiting on the Win to release their summer schedule. They do have a big spring series going on now, so obviously they are more focused on that, and they've been getting a pretty good turnout for all of the tournaments out there. Also waiting for the online bracelet events, which were rumored to be coming out on March 15th, a date that has come and gone, with no word yet on what the online bracelet events on WSOP.com will be this summer. So we're still filling in a few blanks in the schedule, but needless to say, I am ready for Vegas this summer. I have a lot of travel between now and then. Like right now I'm in Arizona. Next month I'll be traipsing around my old favorite stomping grounds of Ontario, Canada, with stops in Niagara Falls and Toronto coming up in April. So there's a lot to do between now and the World Series of Poker, but I'm ready. I'm excited, and I really can't wait. Tell me what you guys think about the newly released Venetian schedule for the summer. I don't think they call it Deepstack Extrava-HANDS-a anymore. I think they dropped the Extrava-HANDS-a part at some point along the line, maybe right before COVID. They just started calling it the Deepstack series, whatever you want to call it. Are you excited? Are you going to play at Venetian this summer? Hit me up on Twitter at Clayton Comic and let me know your plans. All right, let's review the hands that we discussed last week. I'm going to use a tool called GTO Wizard for this. Now, this is probably the best tool I've come across, literally ever, to help you improve your poker game. You can study spots that you've already played or spots that you think you struggle with. They have a drill feature where you can just drill over and over. For example, the other day I plugged in facing a 3-bet from the button when I have opened from the cutoff. How should I respond to a 3-bet from the button with an 80 big blind stack? So you can look at the GTO solutions, figure out which hands you're supposed to 4-bet, when you're supposed to fold and when you're supposed to call, and how often you're supposed to do each. It really helps you get a feel for where there might be some holes in your game. You can look at pre-flop, post-flop, play out the whole hand, however you want to do it. You can sign up for GTO Wizard by clicking the link in the description of this podcast. And then when you're ready to finally purchase, as long as you use our link, you will save 10%. But you have to create your account using the link in the description of this podcast so that you can save 10% when you're ready to buy. I recommend this product very, very highly. It's easy to use and it's fun. So last week we were talking about the Lone Card Daily Double. It's a $55 tournament with a $25,000 guarantee. It's played every single day on ACR Poker. And at this point, the blinds were 700 and 1400 with a 175 ante per player. At this point, the table was 7-handed. I had 125K. I was doing great because the average was only 65K. I had everyone at my table covered, and the action folded to me in the cutoff with ace-queen offsuit, and I opened for the minimum. Of course, nothing controversial about that. The solver does the same 100% of the time. The button folded, and the small blind called with 100K behind, so he will be our effective stack throughout. At that point, the pot is 6,800, and the flop came 6, 5, 4 with 2 diamonds. We had the ace of diamonds in our hand. Opponent checked, and we bet 1,400, the minimum bet, into the 6,800 pot, and opponent called. So let's look at what the solver thinks of my play. Well, GTO Wizard says we should be checking 53% of the time and betting small 47% of the time, kind of mixing it up between either 1 blind or 1.5 blinds, but a very small bet all the time when we do bet. And so I'll give myself a check mark for that play. That's totally cool. And let's see, the small blind called, and then we saw on the turn the king of spades, at which point our opponent checked to us again, and I decided to check behind. Let's see what GTO Wizard has to say. Yeah, the solver checks behind 100% of the time on this card, which actually really surprised me. I mean, I do feel like that king is a better card for our range than it is for villain's range, but I suppose that having been called on the flop, we're not likely to get a bluff through here on the turn, I think, because there are so many draws available on this draw-heavy board. So that's my guess as to why we are always, literally 100%, check it back on that king of spades. The river paired the board with another king, the king of hearts, and this time opponent leads into us 4,000 into the 9,600 pot, and I decided to call, turning my ace-queen into a stone bluff catcher, and the solver actually calls this river bet 98% of the time. I was shocked. I remember last week I wasn't sure if I should be calling, or is this just a pure fold? Like, do we have to try to catch bluffs? Is it unlikely that our opponent is ever bluffing when the king pairs on the river? That's like just not a great scare card for him to bet on. But yeah, the solver calls 98% of the time. That really surprised me, guys, because we have the ace of diamonds, which I would think is a card that we would want him to have when he's bluffing. And so, you know, we kind of block some of his bluffs because you would think some missed flushes would be in that bluffing range. I found it interesting. The solver calls 98%, folds less than 0.2%. So this is basically a pure call, although the solver, less than 2%, does raise to 16K, 4X. You know, that's fun to just bluff, turn the hand into a bluff every so often. But, you know, whenever I see something that's that low frequency, you can kind of discount it. You know, I'm not really trying to play like a perfect robot wizard. I don't think we're giving up very much if we never, ever, ever raise with ace-queen in this spot. But yeah, that's just, you know, to be thorough. That is part of the strategy overall. So yeah, I found that fascinating. And this is why I really like using GTO Wizard. I can figure out what I know and what I don't know about this incredibly complicated game that we call No Limit Texas Hold'em. All right, well, let's move on. I want to continue with this same event. And this will be new hands for this week, where we are playing, kind of getting deep now into the long card daily double, and now the blinds have gone up to 800 and 1600, at which point we have 100K, and the average is around 70K, so again, we're doing just fine. The action folds to the button, who opens to 3,200, just a minimum raise, and he's only got 32,000. The small blind folds, and we are in the big blind, holding the 7 of spades, 4 of spades. So, you know, let's talk about this. It's obviously not a great hand. It's a suited 2 gapper and a pretty low one at that. So you could say, well, why don't we just fold? But the problem is we're getting 4.5 to 1, and it's pretty easy to play, especially against a relatively short stacked opponent, kind of based on what the flop is, whether we should be check raising and trying to get all in, or whether we should be check folding when we miss it completely. Pretty hard to make a mistake with a hand like this. You're usually going to miss the flop, but when you do hit it, it's usually pretty easy to figure out what to do and not make any egregious errors. So I did make the call, getting better than 4 to 1 on a call. And now with 8,600 in the middle, opponent has just 30,000 behind. So his SPR is somewhere between 3 and 4. And the flop comes 10 of diamonds, 6 of clubs, 5 of clubs. So 10, 6, 5 with 2 clubs. Hero holding the 7, 4 of spades for the open-ended straight draw. And I decided to check. Opponent bets 4K into 8,600. And now I have a decision. You know, should we just be check raising here, trying to get all in? I think if we do check raise to any amount, we're going to be priced in to call a shove. So that's why I say trying to get all in. Not that you want to necessarily get all in with 7 high. Is it best to check shove? By the time he bets 4K, there's 12,600 in the middle, and he's got another 26,000 behind. So it would be a pretty large check shove. Ask yourself this question: what hands would I do this with for value? Because I'm having trouble thinking of a hand that would check shove for value, right? Like, so if we had flopped a set or two pair, I don't know if we'd want to try to get all in with it. So for that reason, I decided to just flat call here. I think it's probably a mix between check calling and check raising. I don't think there will be too much check shoving going on with the 7-4 or with really any hand, but I will certainly check that out for next week's episode. Anyway, I checked, he fired 4,000. I called, and I kind of felt a little handcuffed just based on the fact that our opponent starts this hand with only 20 big blinds. At that point, the pot was 16,600, and our opponent had 26,000 behind, and the turn paired the board with the 10 of spades. I'm first to act in the big blind, and we've got a decision to make. Do we want to bet and try to represent a 10 or something? Do we want to put out a tiny bet and see if we can control the price, try to see a cheap river or something like that? I decided to check again, but I think that some of those other options do make sense. I think leading really handcuffs our in-position opponent when he doesn't really have much. We could probably get him to fold most of his ace high now or on the river if we decide to come out swinging with a bet here on the turn. So, I mean, there is value in doing that. That might be a viable strategy, especially because he is getting so short at this point. But I decided to check, and opponent checked behind. The river came the deuce of spades. So our final board is 10 of diamonds, 6 of clubs, 5 of clubs, 10 of spades, deuce of spades. Well, now we've gotten to the river, and we have 7 high. And we know from all of the work we've been doing with GTO Wizard and other study that we should usually turn our very worst hands into bluffs, right? We're never going to win this pot with 7 high. So I decided to bluff. And now the question just becomes, how much? Well, there's 16,600 in the middle, opponent with 26,000. I decided to go really small. I bet 5,700. So right around 1/3 of the pot. And I felt like this should get it done a good amount against ace high type of hands, king high type of hands. Maybe he can hero call some of those hands. I don't really think he will, especially when, if you think about it, the deuce does complete one possible open-ender, the 4 tray, which we block him from having. So I might as well rep it myself. So yeah, I was pretty happy when he folded and I took down the pot. It is not a big part of my game to do small bets when I'm bluffing. Typically, when I'm bluffing, I have a polarized range, and so I do a bigger sizing, which is what you're supposed to do when you're polarized. But in this particular spot, I feel like there are a lot of hands that are not particularly strong that I might bet for value. You know, an example might be a hand like 8-6, where I end up with 10s and 6s with an 8 kicker, right? That's not particularly polarized. And because of the way the hand has played out, I think I can bet a much bigger range for value, trying to get called by a hand like ace 5 or possibly even just ace high. So because I would be value betting with such a wide range, I can now bluff with a wider range. And because I'm not so polarized, I can bet much, much smaller. So this hasn't really been a big part of my game in the past, but it's another tool in the toolkit. I feel like I did a pretty good job of evaluating how polarized I am and then adjusting my bet size accordingly. I would love to know what exactly he folded, but I guess he really didn't have very much at all. All right, let's do one more hand from the same tournament. At this point, we're about 20 places off the money. The blinds are 900, 1,800 with a 225 ante per person, something you will never see at the Venetian or any other Las Vegas hotel. Let's see, the average stack was right around 80,000, so we're doing fine. We're a little bit above average here, about 25% above average with our 100K stack. The overall chip leader in third position opens to 3,600 off of a stack of 180,000. So at this late stage of the tournament, this guy has 100 big blinds. And that is a lot. A little bit about this opponent. I've only seen him play about 15 hands, but so far, since he sat down at our table, he has been wild and loose. I mean, he's been, like, his numbers, 47% VPIP with 40% PFR, 17% 3-bet. Like, he's got big laggy numbers. Now, I wouldn't read too much into that because we are, just talking about 15 hands here. It's very possible that he's a tight player who just happened to pick up a good run of cards as soon as he sat down at the table. But all things being equal, it is much more likely that he is a chip leader trying to start the bubble abuse process about 20 places off the money. So for that reason, I think I should have a pretty wide 3-betting range. I'm on the button. The action folds to me on the button, and I've got the ace of hearts, queen of diamonds. So I think, this is obviously a mandatory 3-bet, but I would 3-bet with a much worse hand than this, maybe all the way down to like ace 7 suited versus this opponent, based on what I've seen so far and the fact that I have the all-important button. So I did 3-bet. I made it small, just 10.5K. I remember he had opened to 36K, which is the minimum. The action folded all the way back to the original raiser, who called my 3-bet, and we're going to see a flop with 25,000 in the middle. Hero with 90,000 remaining in the stack. So again, SPR between 3 and 4. The flop comes king of clubs, jack of clubs, 6 of diamonds. King, jack, 6 with 2 clubs. Hero with the ace of hearts, queen of diamonds. So we have a gut shot Broadway draw, but not much else. Ace high, I suppose. Opponent checks, and I decided not to bet this flop. I didn't want to get blown off of my hand. As mentioned, he's been a very wild, very loose, very aggressive player in the 15 or so hands that we've watched him play. And for that reason, I just didn't want to get check raised. And I feel like this flop allows him to check raise with worse a lot. Like anytime he has a flush draw, or if he's got like a queen 10 or possibly even a gut shot straight draw of his own, he could apply a lot of pressure to me. And I didn't really want that when I have ace high, which could be good, and a draw to the nuts, which is always nice. So I decided to just play slow. I'm hoping to hit a 10, obviously. Instead, the turn comes the 5 of clubs, and that completes the flush. King, jack, 6, 5 with 3 clubs. I have no clubs, and opponent checks again. I decided this is not a good spot for me to bet. I feel like I can get called by any club, any jack, any king. And I also had kind of little alarm bells going off in my head. As Vince Van Patten used to say in the early days of the World Poker Tour, I felt something. Like there was an alarm bell going off in my head. Why is this super aggressive player not being aggressive right now? Whenever somebody who always takes a stab at it doesn't take a stab at it, it makes me wonder what the heck is going on. One explanation is he just respects me so much. He knows who I am. He's intimidated by my ACR avatar and just doesn't want to tangle with me. I think it's more likely, however, that he's trying to trap me with whatever he's got. And between that and the fact that ace queen still has some kind of showdown value, I decided to check behind once more. So there's still 25K in the middle. And now the river comes the 6 of clubs, pairing the board and adding a 4th club. We have the ace of hearts and queen of diamonds. And now our opponent bets 19,000 into the 25,000 chip pot. Do you want to call with ace queen and no club? There is some chance my hand is good. I realize that. But for this price, it has to be good way more often than I think it will be. And so I decided to throw my hand away. I wanted to discuss this hand on the podcast because so often I'm telling you guys about all the bluffs I pulled off and all the wild, aggressive, loose play that I do. But in this situation, nearing the money bubble of a medium small stakes tournament on ACR Poker, I decided to just be tight and passive, and I missed a flop. You don't have to try to win every single hand. I remember saying that when I was streaming this hand. I said that out loud. Clayton, you don't have to try to win every single hand. So this is another thing that I'm learning through GTO Wizard and other study, is that sometimes you just have to let the game come to you. In this situation, the game did not come to me, and so I decided not to force the issue and just maintain an above average chip stack with about 100 players remaining in the long card daily double. And that'll do it for this episode. You guys, I want to hear your thoughts on all of the hands that I played, all the things I did. And by the way, if you haven't yet joined ACR Poker, I've got a great offer for you. Just click the link in the description of this podcast, and you can receive a 100% first-time deposit bonus up to $2,000 just by using the promo code TPE. And for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, with special thanks, as always, to our very generous sponsor, ACR Poker, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas Plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Carry mine, no she can't read a mile. Hold the face, she's got to love nobody. Carry mine, no she can't read a mile. Hold the face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, it's not rough, it isn't fun. Oh, whoa.